Yeah, I would say we knew about it as we started our basically all-season program, probably a week or two before, and at the end of the day, listen, we respect Derek's decision. He's been nothing but a joy to work with, all the way back to my time in Carolina with Derek, and then what value we provided last year, not only on the field but off the field, as well as a guy that brought a lot of wisdom to our team and the quarterback room in particular.
And on the math alone, obviously taking a quarterback away, it would figure to help the chances of a guy like Tyree being signed as an undrafted free agent. But can you go beyond that as far as Tyree's, what you see in terms of his actual ability to land a backup spot on this team?
We haven't even had our first practice.
Right.
Special. No, I mean, it's like all the guys. Listen, it's great, number one, to have a local guy, right, from UB, as well as Cam Lewis, that's here with us, and I think that says a lot about the program that Coach Lapel runs over at UB and the direction they're headed. In particular with Tyree, look, he's a talented young man that's just got through his first meetings and walked through and about to get his first professional practice under his belt. So we're anxious to see what he can do, and certainly the talent is there in a lot of different ways, and but there's also a process involved of taking it one practice at a time.
Sean, given the roster limitation that you have sometimes, is it a guarantee that teams should always carry 3 quarterbacks on the 53, or has that kind of changed maybe in your? I mean, you had 3 last year, but has that changed maybe a bit that you don't need the 3?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on probably the complexion of your roster year to year, week to week, and then if you go back, some people have 2, but they carry a third that's not necessarily, maybe a primary quarterback first, but his secondary position's quarterback. If you go back to what we did the first year here with Joe Webb, who we used on special teams, he was a piece at wide receiver, and then he was also a quarterback that could step in and do some things for us there. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. If you study the percentages over the years, it probably has dropped a little bit in terms of the amount of teams that do carry 3. We did carry 3 last year, so I think it's year to year.
What do you feel about the need to still maybe fill the experience void in the room, the quarterback room?
Well, we feel good about, number one, adding Ken Dorsey to the room, and Ken and if you go back to with Derek, Ken and Derek worked together hand in hand in Carolina for a number of years, and I think I'd be a little bit more concerned about it had we not added Dorsey to the mix this offseason. So, and then with some of the experience that Matt brings to the table too, this isn't his first go around. So that piece, along with the influence that Brian has in the room, at this point, I feel comfortable with what we've got.
Coach, how much do you kind of alter your evaluation process, knowing the newness of what these guys are absorbing coming in the door, and just maybe focus more on strict physical ability to play their respective positions, and then worry about the absorption of the offense, spitting back out, executing, etc.?
It's probably a little bit of all that. The thing that they all have in common is they're all behind this time of year. So there's a common bond for this group of guys. And look, our rookie class last year, I thought, set the bar, and maybe even the year before that, to be quite honest, with what they were able to do off the field and then their contribution levels on the field. And so this rookie class has its work cut out for itself in terms of handling themselves the right way off the field and then contributing on the field, whether it be special teams, offensively or defensively. But they are all behind at this point just because of just getting here basically last night.
Sean, what went into the decision to not pick up Shaq Lawson's 5th year on his contract?
Yeah, it's a fair question. Listen, the critical piece to that is that we've had communications with Shaq, and we are on the same page, really, Josh, with where we are and how we view Shaq. And this doesn't necessarily mean that he's not, after this year we're going to go our separate ways. We like really where he is and the work he's put in of late. so I think the critical piece of it, like I said, is that we're on the same page with where we are and where he is.
Sean, to follow up a little bit, have you been around players in the past? I'm not saying Shaq's motivated by money at the end of the day, or a new contract even, but have you been around players in the past where when they get to this spot, you all of a sudden see a different guy kind of turn the edge a little bit?
You know, it varies, and some of that consistency is really what you look for. You want consistency because of the trust that's, and this is separate of Shaq's situation, but just generally speaking, with consistency comes trust, and that's a critical piece in any team, in developing a team and developing individual players, and the investment that goes with some of these situations.
Sean, you're probably more familiar with a guy like Duke Williams, having been here, I guess, well, since January. What have your impressions been of Duke as far as workout goes, and just what his commitment has been and where he's come from?
Right, you know, I saw the little bit of the article the other day. I thought it was a good article, and read some of his quotes there that Derek shared with me, and I like the fact that he seems to have developed some self-awareness in terms of what went on a few years back to where he is now, and knowing what he must do to, at least off the field, to prove, you know, his worth to people in this league, at least in terms of the decision makers around the league, and starting with us. So I'm anxious to see him perform today as well, and it's good to have him, or the ability to have him perform at this weekend's camp.
Sean,
First
David
impressions
Sills
mean
has
a lot,
got
obviously. I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
First impressions mean a lot, obviously. It's the first chance you had this whole group together. Yesterday when they reported, what was your impression overall as this rookie class comes in?
Yeah, I thought they were nervous. To be expected, really, right? They're, you know, listen, it's a good group, and you know, again, we're off to a good start. You know, there's a lot of work to get done here, so I don't think you really know about a draft class until you're 2 or 3 years down the road. So all those draft grades, you know, and that's for all you guys out there. You know, we'll know a little bit more once we get going, and guys actually, in particular when we get to training camp. I mean, today is good to get acclimated to the systems, as was mentioned earlier. And one of the questions, at the end of the day, it's not really football until we get to training camp where pads come on and the physical elements added.
Sean, David Sills has got a really interesting backstory. What was it about him that you guys liked in the pre-draft process, and what do you want to see from him this weekend and moving forward?
Yeah, you know, look, the guy is, we talk about valuing smarts and intelligent football players, and having that quarterback background is an important piece of that. It doesn't necessarily always mean that a player is football smart, but that quarterback piece in one's background is somewhat unique, and I think sometimes the more players like that you can add to the team, it adds to the overall intelligence of your football team. And so he's got a little bit of a feel in the passing game, I think partly because of his quarterback background, and I think his story's been well documented out there. It's a pretty unique story, and I love the fact that he seems to kind of approach his college career and then every day moving forward with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder.
What can you learn about guys this weekend in this setting?
Well, you know, you start off with just seeing how they really start to integrate into what we do. These guys are all coming from they're all like, you know, free agents, if you use that type of example, coming from colleges, and some have been out. Some of the tryout guys this year have been out maybe a year or two as well. So they're all coming from different spots, different locker rooms, different cultures, and it's important that they start to integrate themselves into our standard and how we do things. And the sooner they do that, the better. The sooner they do that, the quicker we can make progress and start to head in the right direction.
Sean, I know you touched on it briefly earlier, but Cam Lewis, what was it about him that attracted you guys to, you know, be interested in that?
Yeah, our scouts do a great job of identifying talent, and that undrafted free agent period is an important piece. You saw what we were able to get out of it last season and a little bit the season before, but in particular last season with what Brandon and his staff and how they executed that with Levi and with Robert and so on and so forth. And then Cam, I think the thing that sticks out to me about Cam is everyone you talk to around their program at UB raved about who he is as a person, his smarts, his toughness, and so, again, to be able to add another local guy, I think was a benefit to all.
You have a good relationship, obviously, with Coach Leipold. How much of the way he runs his program, the character and the men he brings through and builds, did that matter to you in selecting both Tyree and Cam?
Well, we certainly had yes, I mean, and then in addition to that, so we certainly had some insight, right, because of, excuse me, our relationship with the coach and his staff. There's a lot of trust between our staffs, and so you're able to get a little bit of an inside scoop on who these two young men were as people, as young men, and again, the more the more we dug into it, the more we liked what we saw, and then watching both young men at the pro day, how they handled themselves, and that was again another look for us at what they could do, and then after that, it's what happens on the field, and our scouts do a great job with that.
You drafted Joseph, who's 230 and can move, obviously. Just what do you think about the way the game has changed for linebacker? I mean, if you're not running a 3-4, that inside linebacker, big thumper, do you feel like that niche has just keeps shrinking in the NFL today?
Yeah, I would say that's a position where what we like may not be what other people like, and the same at safety, and that's where there's some variation in body type and play style in terms of what we like based on what fits with our system, our scheme, and so on and so forth, or what we value based on, to your point, where the game is trending. Years ago in Philadelphia, I think we were out in front of the curve as it related to safeties. We didn't look at our safeties as you got to have a strong safety, a box safety, and a free safety. We had just two interchangeable parts with Brian Dawkins and Michael Lewis in terms of safeties. We just labeled them safeties, and that's what we do now with Jordan and Micah. And then in a similar fashion, with some of these other positions, linebacker being one of them, the ability to affect the game with some of the skill sets that both Sean brings to the table.
Sean, with the way you and Brandon talked about the way the board fell in the draft, not getting a wide receiver, how much was stressed on getting an undrafted free agent like a Sills and like an Easley, was knowing that you wanted to improve the passing game a little bit more after the draft just because of the way it fell?
A little bit of that. I mean, listen, we're confident in what we have already in-house, so that's the first piece of it. Adding John to the equation this offseason with the free agency, and then Cole as well, and then the guys that we have with Zay and Robert and so on and so forth. We're confident with those guys, and then to your point, the body type of David, what he brings to the table in terms of his style of play was a conversation, and being able to find that guy, target that guy during the undrafted free agent market, and then easily as well with his skill set in the slot there.
Did you know that David wrestled in high school?
I'm sorry?
Did you know that David wrestled in high school?
I think I've got a pretty good feel for most of the guys that have wrestling, even if they just bought wrestling shoes maybe over the years. So I got a pretty good feel for who has and who hasn't over the years.
Sean, for you, how hard is it to keep things in perspective with a weekend like this and not get too high or too low on a guy because of how they were run?
Yeah, that's real. I mean, that's it, Joe. You hit the nail on the head. This is, you go from the combine, which is the shorts and t-shirt Olympics, to where we are today, which is, again, basically for all intents and purposes, jerseys and shorts and helmets now. But yeah, let's not get too far, let's not get too high or too low on anyone, because again, as I alluded to earlier, we don't start real football until training camp comes along. But there is the part of understanding our habits, how quickly they can pick up the scheme, and some of those as evaluations. And look, everything's evaluated on the field and off the field. So that evaluation has already begun, and it is an important piece that we get off to the right start.
Sean, what do you make of what Christian Wade is attempting to do here in the transition from a different sport?
Yeah, I think number one, the initiative by the league is tremendous. I think it's a great opportunity to grow our sport, grow the brand of the NFL, and to watch Christian, the way he works, the work ethic. He's got a great smile. I think he brings positive energy every day to our building, and that's, I don't think you can place an exact value on that, but we certainly value it here. it's certainly he's got a big challenge in front of himself. I mean, for me, I try and put myself in his shoes to have never really played the game. I mean, you just imagine we're in the meeting room and you put up an offensive line, hey, this is the A gap, this is the B gap, and this is the C gap. That's new for him, right? So things that a lot of our players have been around maybe since age 5 or 6, at age what, he's now getting introduced for the first time to those concepts, which, so he's got a long road to haul here, but I think he's up for the challenge.
What does a guy have to do, in terms of these tryout guys, what does a guy have to do to make it? And do you have any favorite stories over the years of guys that have been able to turn this 2-day tryout into a roster spot?
Yeah, I mean, go back, he's got to have wrestled, or that's number one. No, it's, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I want to see, you get a feel over the years. I mean, you guys are out there, you get a feel the longer you're out there of guys that have it or guys that don't, or guys that have a chance to have their chin over the bar from a skill set and measurable standpoint, and then you watch how they carry themselves, you watch how they diagnose plays, how quickly they process the game when the ball is snapped. Ben Jacobs is a guy, just one of the handful of guys I've been around. We had Ben where I came from and got him out of this camp, and he ended up playing. I think he just retired last year, and now he's one of their special teams coaches down in Carolina. So I don't count any of those guys out. I try and look at all of them with an open mind that they could help us. And at the end of the weekend, I think that the important part here is that these guys all understand that whether this is their last stop or not, at some point there's life after football, and that's an important transition.